I'm going to be getting into spoilers pretty quickly here, so if you haven't seen Orb on the Movements of the Earth yet, go out and watch it. It's double plus good. One of the best shows I've seen over the past several years. Alright, so getting into spoilers. I thought I had my angle for this review going into the final arc. I thought I was going to say, sure, it did a lot of things right, but I still have to criticize it for feeling too much like a work of fiction, too much like a story. Now, what do I mean by that? Because obviously this is a work of fiction, it is a story, but you should still be able to take a story like this seriously. It's a work of historical fiction, essentially. You should be able to feel like if a time traveler sneezed, this is the story we could have actually had. And I think this kind of concept, it still applies to fiction at large, but especially some more serious fiction like this. When you have too many odd coincidences, too many improbable circumstances and events all piling up on top of each other, it kind of takes you out of the story, makes it take it less seriously, and just roll your eyes with each additional crazy development, thinking, oh boy, what's going to happen next? So let me give you a few examples of that. Sure. So you start out the story with this 12-year-old astronomy genius who ends up killing himself in prison by poisoning himself behind the guard's back. That in and of itself, okay, it's a very improbable story, but sure, I can at least bite on that as a work of fiction. But you combine that with so many other highly improbable things, it starts to get a little ridiculous. You have, for example, people of lower social class or lower social status suddenly talking about philosophy, suddenly taking these painstaking astronomical records out of nowhere. You have them reading these brand new avant-garde books under a high-pressure situation and suddenly, immediately realizing all of the social, political, and economic implications of it. You have all these plot-wise coincidences like the head inquisitor's daughter being one of these astronomers. You have all these various lucky and unlucky breaks that, once again, just they have the astronomers and the inquisitors just barely canceling each other out with each generation and leaving just a trickle of a hint that passes on to the next generation to make the story continue. You have weird things like carving these new academic teachings into poor people's scalps. And you even have a character at some point saying things like, well, everything until this point has gone perfectly smoothly despite it being the most difficult part of our plan. So surely everything from now on is gonna be smooth sailing. And when all of these things happen, once again, you just can't take it all that seriously. You get drawn out of the story, your emotional investment disappears, and you start rolling your eyes. Oh boy, what's going to happen next? What kind of crazy, weird twist is going to happen in this work of historical fiction that I'm supposed to find somewhat plausible? Just feels too faked, too far-fetched. And who would write a story like this? What's the profile of someone who would put a story like this together? Obviously very intelligent, knows their science down, all their astronomy, also very educated in terms of religion, philosophy, academics in general. Also someone who has a great idea for a story, a great concept, but perhaps is a little bit awkward into putting that story into words because it ends up feeling kind of amateurish or a bit unpolished. Well, that is the main character of the final arc, someone who meets all those requirements, someone who is really intelligent but puts together a kind of awkward story and probably doesn't have much of a background in story writing, more of an academic background in astronomy, philosophy, etc. And that got me wondering, so when I didn't figure this out for myself, I just noticed, okay, you watch the final arc and you think, something is clearly off here. Clearly you can't take everything that came up to this point in the story at face value. So I looked it up online and there's a popular theory. I don't think there's a true consensus here, but there's a popular theory that everything up until the arc was a story written by the main character of the final arc. And there's a lot of debate over it, but to me, it just makes perfect sense because everything in those first several arcs does feel like a story. So there goes my review, that angle that I had, that I was going to say, sure, everything just felt too fictitious. Well, turns out that was all done intentionally to fake the audience out. Well played.